There we go. That will wrap it up for our opening segment of Terry's Chocolate Orange. Yeah, it's funny. And now, sorry. There we go. Well, that wraps up another week, another episode here at the Nitral, at the Nigel Cider Extravaganza. Who is Nigel? And if you enjoy our podcast and want to help, please spread the word about the Neutral Cider Hotel. Why not? Shut up. Tell your friends about it and encourage them to listen. You can also follow, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Oh, you fuckers. You do it. You do it. You do it. Fuck off. You do it. Go on. Everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Neutral Cider Hotel podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Cook, and coming up a little bit later on the show, we'll be doing a chat and tasting with fine cider distributor Mr. Felix Nash. And finally, we'll be taking on your listener questions. But first, well, the Google alerts that I get and grant every week to alerting us as to, what's big in the world of cider every week. I had something that popped up around an ancient, well, I say ancient, apparently it dates back to the 13th century, the custom of the Paynton pudding. Now, Paynton is a town in South Devon, and the baking of a giant, ruddy, great big pudding.
So, hold on.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, can we verify and determine what style of pudding? Is it a meat pudding? Like, we have black pudding up here in Scotland, or is it a sweet cake pudding?
I believe it's more of the sweet rather than the savoury variation. From the story that I'm about to tell you, that would seem to be the case, because this tradition, it still happens to this day, of creating. It's just a ridiculously large pudding that gets taken into the town and everybody kind of tucks into it. And the most legendary event happened in 1859 when, in celebration and commemoration of the finishing of the railway line at Paynton, which is a port. They decided to do a giant pudding, one of the biggest they'd ever done, to feed 850 of the poor parishioners. It's very nice, but also to feed the 300 navvies who had built this railway line. And apparently, everything was going fine. There was a first course, and then was the second course, and everyone was sat down and having a jolly good time. And then this 1.5 ton pudding got wheeled out, 8 foot tall and 5 feet wide.
You'd lose your shit, wouldn't you? You would lose your shit looking at that.
Well, they did because they had been given, and I quote, an unlimited supply of Paynton cider during the course. And when the sight of this giant pudding came in, they ripped it apart and had the largest food fight that's ever been recorded in the history of South Devon. So
what year was this again? Sorry,
1859.
Back when they were swilling with Bumbo. Jesus, yeah, that was just
you betcha.
Painful, wasn't it?
And that South Devon around sort of Paynton was a really, really big cider area. It was it was taken out through the ports there. You still got the likes of Hunt's down there, and Yard is a really small producer at sort of Stoke Gabriel, and in that area, it was once upon a time this really big area. The Newton Abbot Cider Bar is in that area too, as a testament to this tradition. So it just made me giggle that everybody got cidered up and smashed a pudding. Basically.
Unlimited cider is just not. It's not a thing that should happen, is it? Like limit your cider. Drink responsibly.
Yeah, that's a warning to anyone who's planning their own pudding unveiling.
Yeah, choose wisely your beverage of choice to accompany that. So there we go. That's my little insight. So how about you, my angel delight, Martyn Goodwin Sharma? How's your week?
Yeah, really good. I did, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I've just been drinking cider and getting ready for tomorrow. A little pre-warm up for it. I'm table on our International Cider Challenge. So we're going to be waking up bright and early after this and drinking more cider. So just getting the muscle trained this week.
Bravo. Well, I did mine this morning, so I've been drinking since 9 o'clock this morning, and it's not morning now, listeners. I know you can't tell, but it's been a long day. But it's all good. It's all good.
I didn't get asked this year, so thanks, Gabe.
He's not the chair.
I am not the chair this. I am not the chair this year, my dear friend.
Finchy, isn't it? Is it Finchy?
Maybe he assumed you weren't able to attend.
Oh, so Grant, my little sugar plum fairy. What's your week been like?
It's been pretty good. Pretty good. I wanted to mention a new cider release. I listened to recent episodes, just catching up with past episodes, and listened to Gabe talking about his pog cider, and I felt like we were a little bit harsh. I felt like we were a little bit hard on him.
Gabe.
The spotted dick of the cider world is the pog.
Yeah. And I thought, and it's he's donating money to charities.
Oh, did we slag it off and he's doing it for charity?
Yep.
Well, he told us.
That's right. Well, Martyn, you went as far to say, we've all been in lockdown. Maybe fuck off. I don't know. But anyway, well, it's going towards a kind of a charity, or it's going towards helping the restaurant and hospitality industry. It's the charity Brighter Times is the name of the cider. And it's POG for anyone, I guess, outside the US. That would be passion fruit, orange, and guava juice added to a cider. And so you can understand why we maybe weren't that enamored with the idea. But yeah, I think it's only right that we give them an extra wee plug. So
absolutely,
yeah. The hour and a half wasn't enough. So honestly, right now I am drinking the Black Widow, which is the last one, which is blackberries and freshly pressed New York apples, and it's like mad fruity jam. So if his pog is like this kind of quality, super fruit forward and easy drinking, then yeah, it's easy work to give money to charity, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if I say utilize a number of times this evening as well. All right, that's it for our opening segment of Terry's Chocolate Orange. Now, thank you. Now let's see what's happening in the news. And now, here at the Nutricider Hotel, it's time for this week's news. And we've got a special guest. That's right, we are speaking to Alex Metcalf, Learning and Discovery Manager at the Campaign for Real Ale, also known as CAMRA. Welcome, Alex, to the hotel.
Thank you for having me. It's amazing to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We always like having new guests in, especially in the news section. This is great.
Yeah, we're really adding to this news bit. Like, I'm surprised Tom Oliver isn't coming in next.
I know. Well,
he might just turn up.
Yeah, he just sort of hangs around the foyer quite a lot, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
He might just barge in like I did earlier.
Well, that's all right. Breaking down the door. I want a drink. Come on, let me in. Alex, it is it's Cider Month currently for CAMRA. Tell us a little bit about what that means and what activities have been and will be continuing to happen.
So Cider Month we celebrate as a campaign in both May and October, following the key really crucial times of year for producers and drinkers alike. This time around in May, we're really pulling the stops out. We've got a whole range of digital assets and ideas for branches and individuals to celebrate, buying from local producers, online events, all sorts of things to get people celebrating and really, really pushing cider at this time. We've got a whole bunch of existing exciting content people can check out across audio, video, all sorts of text resources. The way we slice it's for every level of drinker, no matter where they are on their drinker's journey, if they're a beginner, an enthusiast, or a connoisseur. There's got to be something for somebody to get started with, and we really deal with that as well. So we've got people talking about starting out tasting cider, how cider is made, cider terminology, talking about cider, cider history, cider and food pairing, blending and maturation, wassailing, women in working in cider, cider quality, you name it. And we've got it by a whole raft of wonderful, lovely people, including the illustrious Gabe we've got here.
Hello.
I was going to say, did Gabe contribute anything to this?
Absolutely, an absolute ton of stuff. There's loads and loads of stuff in there by Gabe.
Including, Grant, actually, I don't know whether you've seen it. It came out not so long ago, obviously during this month, of a video of my little trip to Scotland from last year. And so featuring visits to the Caledonian Cider Factory. Hello, everybody. There.
Right?
And the Navarre Estate and the lovely Max and Penny at Steelhead in Dumfriesshire too. So you can go and get your Scottish fix.
I'm really proud that's the first in the World of Cider series that we started the World of Cider series in Scotland.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, that's it done, right? I mean,
that's it. We don't need to go anywhere else.
One episode. Yeah. It's a short series.
So we've got all sorts of amazing people, including our Bill Bradshaw, James Finch, aka the Cider Critic, Alison Taffs, who's doing some amazing work for us, particularly on cider. Susanna Mansfield, illustrious landlady of the Station House in Fram-Ferment. So we've got a whole bunch of amazing stuff up already, including things that have come up in Cider Month, the World of Cider, Scotland, kicking off that tour. We've got Bringing Cider to the Table, Part 1, a really amazing series, 3-parter from Bill, featuring Chef Merlin LeBron Johnson at his Somerset restaurant, Ossip. That's a 3-parter going across this year. We've got Harriet Mansell and our very own Felix Nash from the Fine Cider Company.
Tonight's guest.
There you go. Nice kind of little segue there. We've got drinking...
There you go. Nice way to interrupt me, Martyn. That's what I nice little detour away from my
level
notes.
of passive aggressiveness. You will do just fine here, Alex. You could be the fifth musketeer.
I mean, you're sitting there with a real impress me stance, Martyn.
Power stance.
Look at you. It was like,
Sorry,
yes.
that wasn't intentional.
You will tell me about cider.
We've got what have we got? We've got drinking regional ciders. So that's East Kent and Eastern styles from Alison Taffs. She's roving around my adopted county. Obviously, we've got the cider tourism guide and map featuring our very own Grant. We've got a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah, we've got it several times. We've got a very important cider lexicon coming from Gabe, connected with his forthcoming book.
Exciting.
The title of that book, obviously, is Modern British Cider. Thank you.
I asked Ellie, is this a drinking game yet?
Yes.
Oh, blimey. It hasn't been until now, but...
Well, let's do it.
Obviously
God,
drink
listeners at
responsibly,
home,
everybody.
he's just necked a whole bottle. 750 mil. Wow. He's doing a handstand to get drunk.
Impressive.
Oh, dear. And
It's cider month.
we've got mixed fermentation from Matt Curtis, something for both cider and to keep the beer drinkers happy in this cider month, because we can't lose them.
Amazing.
Coming up in the rest of the month, we've got another piece by guess who?
Oh, Ciderologist.
It could be. Additional fruits, flavors, and spices, which is going to be a very interesting one.
Oh,
absolutely.
From Gabe. And then, very excitingly, we've got Knowing Cider Styles from Jane Payton and produced by Emma Inch. That's going to be really exciting. Really looking forward to that.
Jane Payton, who will be on the show. I think I might be able to give a little sneaky announcement there very soon as well. So you're naming all of the illustrious characters and me. Now, Alex, so obviously there's the huge number of activities, events, and sort of content there, which is the repository of that presumably is on the camera website. Give us where the people need to head to have access to that.
So I've just put a massive banner on the central Camera Learn and Discover webpage. So the quickest way is going to be to go to www.camera.org.uk/learn-discover. And that'll get you to the big banner in the middle of the page, and that'll take you straight into the cider timeline and all the events there, all the resources you can access, including an updated producers map as well, which has been fully fleshed out at the beginning of this month, which is fantastic.
Amazing. And I know that Scott is going to ask to make sure that camera, for those who are less sure, is CAMRA, because it's an acronym for the
How
campaign
else would you spell
for
camera?
real.
That's it.
KJYMARTYN.
Absolutely. We've also got a really exciting new development. We've got a new cider definition, which has been long in the making, which is a much more inclusive and accessible sector-wide definition. And that's going to be having a soft launch and some online activities around that later on in the month as well,
Nice.
and supporting content as well.
Who was a part of that? Who was all? I mean, I wasn't asked.
Just getting in there straight away.
Gosh.
To be fair, I did have more to do with the beer definition relaunch. I've been extremely busy getting all this cider stuff ready.
No, that was a genuine question. Who was
I believe it was like people across the sector, stakeholders within camera, and there's been a lot of people asked and consulted.
And Alex, I'm sure you can't tell us the exact definition, but can you let us know if you have cleared up the controversy of cider with a Y versus cider with an I?
Come on.
See,
Commit.
I thought I was well versed in this, but this is completely new on me. I thought this was sort of a nuance of spelling. I didn't actually know anybody ascribes any kind of meaning or,
Well, there is a train of thought that cider with a Y pertains to historically the cider that was the first press, the finest, that made for the manor house, and then this sort of repressed and watered down kind of stuff
like
was the cider, the cider for the
So that's
for
what
the
they do with
masses,
beer, isn't it?
Was it really?
Yeah, that's it's. I've just been reading it. I'm doing the beer with Nat beer school training, and at a certain point when malting techniques evolved, or around the time that malting techniques started to evolve, the people that could afford the best malts, the more expensive to produce. It was before they evolved and became more widely available. The manor house and the estates, they made the strongest beers, and the strongest beers were kept on the manor and were for the kind of richer people, and the smaller the beer got, as in the less alcoholic it went down to the common folk.
And was beer spelled with a Y?
Absolutely.
YB.
BYR.
Beer.
All the beer nerds like, finally they're talking about it.
We
I'm a
managed
plant. I'm a mole.
to hang on this long. So there is that cider with a Y train of thought. Other people
Amazing.
think it's just differentiation of spelling. Alex, thank you so much for coming on to the show, for giving us that amazing wealth of information that you obviously have and that is contained within the Learn and Discovery Centre at the campaign for Real Ale and Cider and Perry on the end. It's brilliant to see that there is so much action, positivity, and championing and advocacy for cider and perry, as well as real ale. So thank you, and thank you to camera and everybody listening. Do check out those pages, and when the opportunity arises, getting to a camera festival sometime soon and drinking that fantastic range of real ale, real cider, and real perry. Okay, that'll do it for the news this week. And a big thanks for Alex for getting us up to speed on all things camera during this May cider month. And, maybe we'll get him in ahead of next cider month in October, maybe even September. Give you a chance to actually know what the ruddy hell is going on. My bad. And anyway, now it's time for this week's interview with that finest of fellows, Mr. Felix Nash. Now, here at the Neutral Cider Hotel, it's time for this week's interview. And today, we've invited into the hotel a man who has had a telling contribution to artisanal cider's renaissance over the last 5 years or so. Establishing his business back in 2014 with a desire to bring exciting ciders to the tables of Michelin-starred restaurants, he has not only achieved this ambition, but he's also heralding a new concept, that of fine cider. Boasting some of the most hyped cider makers in his portfolio, this chap is on the forefront of making cider great again. It gives me great pleasure in welcoming to the show Mr. Felix Nash of the Fine Cider Company.
Hey.
Woo!
Hello.
Felix,
Welcome.
Felix, welcome to the hotel. How are you? How are you today? I've actually already seen you once, haven't I?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I like the subtle Trump reference you put in your introduction as well about making stuff great again. That's a lovely...
Fine cider. It's going to be huge.
That wasn't on purpose when I wrote it, and then I saw it and decided to keep it in. But anyway, that's no. Let's move on. How are you, Felix?
I'm good. It is lovely to see you again. As you say, we had the joy of seeing each other earlier today with the Cider Challenge judging. And
you were invited as well.
Interesting.
Oh,
How many
yeah,
people
nice.
here? Scott, did you fucking do it? Probably did.
Yeah, I'm doing it tomorrow. I'm on the table.
Sorry, the judges were talking.
Oh, God, he's straight in there. Oh, God.
Wowzers. Well, yes. So we had an early start drinking some. Drinking some cider. So there we go. But anyway, apart from drinking cider from 9 o'clock in the morning, what is happening with you at the moment? What's interesting? What's dynamic? Tell us a little bit some of the most prescient things right now with fine cider.
I suppose the latest thing was yesterday. I signed the contract on a lease for a new, quite a lot bigger warehouse. So we should be moving in there soon. After the weird old year we've all had, where there's been, times where everything looked like it was pretty much set to fall apart, through to them being busier than ever. We've done a lot of stuff over the last few months and even the last year to really move things along, and a lot of them are coming together now wonderfully. It's been a lot of planning and such like, and yeah.
You touched a little bit on this last year and how it went from, potential total meltdown to being the busiest you've ever been. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? What the point where I guess nobody really knew what was happening, and then all of a sudden you were the busiest you've ever been. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I guess to almost give you the same kind of answers before, I'm about to have a week off finally after all this, and I'm fascinated to see what actually pops up and actually get a chance to really have a lot of the experiences of, from this time, clarify. But yeah, it all began obviously with the first lockdown, and that sticks in my head as the most intense point. And it was a little bit the case of the gut instinct kicking in, which, thank God, with cider, basically it's been a struggle for the last 7 years anyway. So I was like, great, we're trained for this. Cool, bring it on. Everybody else is on our level now. Let's go.
Carry on as normal.
Bring you all back down into the dirt. Oh my God.
Yeah. And that began with that real swing about to trying to survive, trying to keep cider being sold for our makers, keep that flowing, trying to get a balance between volume and what sales could be possible, which was, of course, the retail side. My main few thoughts were, we have a van, we have a warehouse, we have the whole of London on our doorstep. Technically, we counted as an essential business because booze, obviously, in Britain, that's great.
Thank you very much.
And I spent a couple of days messaging hundreds of people on Instagram, actually, from wonderful responses, customers, wholesale customers who did events for us online, shared that. Hundreds of thousands of people must have seen those posts, those stories shared. I mean, even like James Lowe of Lyle's, the wonderful restaurant, one of the world's 50 best in the UK, did a Instagram live thing with their 100 and whatever thousand followers with Tom Oliver. And it was really the gut instinct being like, we've got to do this stuff really quickly, and people, I think, were very, very supportive because they knew that cider of the type we work with was newer anyway, and it was a struggle. I'm sorry to explain this to you, Grant, if so, but, being a cider merchant, it's not like a wine merchant where everything costs a bit more and you get like the house red, the house white, this big old list. It's, the dribs and drabs. So I think, the real nature of it meant people were very supportive, and that I think is what has helped this real groundswell.
Well, you've said it there, where the kind of the style of ciders you sell. So just bring it back to basics. What is fine cider?
It all began actually with, I think the first thing that really caught my tongue, if you will, and that was very much with my dad as well, was a Yarlington Mill from the one and only Dennis Watkins. The nature of it as a liquid was a whole other thing. And that's where the ball started rolling to very soon after visit people like Tom Oliver. And in those really early days, very nervously or cautiously, ask a couple of makers like Tom Oliver, others where it didn't quite happen, but we did some of their stuff, like Simon Day, but when he was back at Once Upon a Tree, we had a label design sorted for that and everything, but never quite happened. That was a real, just asking if I can try doing certain things in certain ways of labeling bottles, even buying bloody crown caps and having it, bottled elsewhere and all sorts. And it was a bit of a thought process of what to call it. It was this idea that there's such a difference between some of the elements that can occur in cider to some of the mass market or other side, not to say everything doesn't have its place, but that justifies in its own right having slight separation. You don't try and fight over the name cider. You say there's different elements. You add bits and pieces, new territory, if you will. And almost began with the idea of table cider. It was this idea of putting it with food. Really had cider with lunch in Herefordshire, particularly. That was those are the kind of nugget moment, and that was the kind of thinking about what to call it. And but fine just seemed to have a bit more going for it in a very conducive kind of natural manner. So, but as far as what actually drinks-wise constitutes fine cider, well, that's not down to me, is it?
Wow.
Well, you wrote the book on it.
Yeah.
Is it? But so I assume it's down to the drinker. So how have you seen the drinkers change over the years since you started to where they are now, and the people that are drinking the products that you're selling?
Yeah, I mean, that has been the fascinating one. I mean, again, this is where I can chat to Gabe and everybody else should probably, Gabe going back, even further than myself. It sort of feels like such distant history 7-8 years ago. And you say, Martyn, I did write a book. I know there's protocol. I do have the ship's bell. I should probably ring that, but didn't quite grab it. But
We'll get you one.
Yeah, and it was subtitled Understanding as well. So, okay. The drinker, I think, in a sense, you can... It's not so much looking at the drinker that's shifted. That's almost ancillary in a sense to what has been drunk, if you get what I mean.
Yep.
And there's been lots of things we had to do. Like we began with small bottles, predominantly the half-size champagnes, even stuff that made a real impression. Price stuff was tricky, of course, but and it's been fascinating seeing those swathes and bottles that 5 years ago, dribs and drabs would be hard to sell. All of a sudden, the appreciation, the demand, the awareness. So whereas the individual sort of portion of a small bottle before was so focused upon, and then we try to leverage that, saying, like you've got a small bottle Oliver's, get a big bottle on your shelf. People can, they know once they have that small and that small risk, they'll move up, they'll go into that other territory. Now we have a lot of wonderful customers who just deal in the big bottles. Also just, I say the things that makers can do, that's the most wonderful part of it. The fun that makers can have, or the experiments, the things they can justify doing that previously there would be that pasteurization or that other point of caution. Because how quick is this going to sell? Is it going to sit around for ages? Do I have to make this really accessible for the public? And that actually just reminds me, even in the early days, the first year or two, I still had this weird thought panging in my head. Like, you as a person, you want something to be logical. You're like, why don't people know about this kind of cider? Why is that the case? And you try and you try and understand that and contextualize it, I suppose. But I just always had that thought. Like, is there something with it? Is there some like weird mad allergy to one thing that can happen in it that some people have? Is there something else? Is there, what is the reasoning? But that's been fascinating as well.
I'm still asking that question every day. I mean, we're still, although we're considerably further along the journey, there is still a very long way to go. Now, you did obviously, mention the nature of sort of packaging and style and aesthetic. You've been very kind in sending each of us a cider, 3 different ciders amongst your portfolio. So we're just going to open those up and have a wee chat about that. Martyn, what have you got?
So I have Starved Crow, natural, and this is cider with a Y. But this is a bourbon barrel. So basically, do you want to give us the old sales pitch for this one, bud?
I mean, I'll be interested to see if it still has a slight kind of desiccated coconut thing to it. But Starved Crow is made down in East Sussex with by Ben Walgate, also does Tillingham Wines, wonderful natural winemaker. He has quite a bit of fun with what he does, and the kind of fruit he's working with are not the traditional cider apples. You know, it's similar to some of the fruit you get in the US, that kind of eating dessert side, Bramley, John of Gold. You'll probably see a specific set listed in the text on the side of that. Mm-hmm. The bourbon, of course, that comes in the barrel. They're former bourbon whiskey barrels. And the bourbon point, the charring of the inside of the barrel is the really distinctive thing. So as opposed to, say, whiskey up in Scotland and other factors, it's not an area I know too specifically, but that's the distinctive element that it imparts. And I think there's really interesting things going on this side of the country, on the east of the UK. Now, makers who've been playing around a bit more, and you've talked about and even had some of them on lately. But I found his early experimentation, which he did because his neighbor Steve had an orchard, and Starved Crow is basically a collaboration between them. Him, Steve growing, Ben making. They're down near Rye. You can see across the little spire on the top of Rye and its old castle gates, and then through to the sea beyond it, and this amazing kind of yellowy sandstone. These odd spikes. It's old marshland below, kind of old drained marshes, I believe. But I just love with that natural approach on that fruit when you're talking less potential alcohol, often slightly softer muted things, by nature of the fruit. I found his things really fascinating. I say his vines weren't ready. He had this neighbor, so he started playing around with these things. And that was the thing that I found really, really fascinating with it.
Well, trying it, one of the reasons I wanted to try it mainly is to see how the bourbon barrel was integrated into the cider. And it's the first thing you smell. It's like huge barrel character. And I've stirred the glass almost, but you've got this lovely perfumey kind of intensity to it. But like you said, coconut, I thought in my head, it's kind of green coriander-y, and then you've said coconut. It kind of smells like, if you're a beer person, Sriracha Ace. It's got this real, it's like not quite placeable intensity, but it drinks. It's so smooth. It's got this light prickle of acidity. It's really not what I expected at all. It's a bloody lovely one. What have you got, Gabe?
I have got. So I was just going to say the coconut and the coriander sounds like a Massaman curry, but I presume that's not what you've got in the glass there.
It would go well with it. There you go.
Okay, as a match, probably. Okay, very good. I have got the 2019 Dabernet and Yarlington Mill from the fantastic Greg's Pit from the village of Muchmarcle, just next door to Dimmock. James has been. Here we go. James has been making cider and perry at the property at Greg's Pit for nigh on 30 years now, and has had considerable success and accolade over that time. He's only ever made a very small quantity every year, and he's all about the precision in terms of the quality of the fruit and being of perfect ripeness and sort of knowing exactly what he wants to do with it in these blends. And this is well, I suspect that it's undergone a sort of a bit of Kiev, and we've got a bottle conditioning in here. It's just all sort of tobacco and leather. There is softer juiciness, but it's not really kind of juicy. It's just like a soft cushion for everyone. It's just like a big hug, basically. It is absolutely. It's just lush. It kind of looks, smells, and tastes like that Herefordshire earth. It's just got this wonderful, rich vibe going on. Absolutely fab. Grant, what do you think? What have you got?
Well, I've got something pretty different again. I've actually got an ice cider here, Claim by Branland. Yeah. So that's I think we've explained ice cider before, right?
Yeah, we have. We've done it enough, I think.
I mean, I guess it might be. I don't know how specifically this one's made. Felix, you might know. Well, I'm sure you do know. You can maybe explain how this is made in terms of the freezing of the fruit or the juice, or what's the process that Brandland specifically use?
Yeah, well, the key way in which this specific one claim differs from your standard ice cider, it's very much their own creation. It's not fitting to the Quebecanese kind of standard, the set of rules. And if most ciders, ice ciders, for example, you would be using just a sort of 20%, the first 20% that thaws are the must, when you freeze the juice, if you're doing it that way around, rather than leaving fruit on the tree to get very cold and dehydrate as such, to produce that concentrated juice when pressed. If you are doing the method where you freeze the juice and then thaw it, so the water is retained in ice and you are getting this really rich, juice that comes off at a slightly lower freezing point. Often, for example, say that might be the first 20%. That's the case I know for various Brandland things. This takes the sort of 20 up to about 50% of the thaw. So it's much lighter. The alcohol is that slight bit lower than some ice cider. It's not too low, but it's a softer, more floral creation. It's a slightly more sort of summery one. I love this as a sort of pre-dinner thing, a little glass of it, or throughout summer, it's great. And I love that idea as well, that you can take a ice cider in a slight different incarnation. It's not quite the ciderkin version of ice cider. You're not adding water or whatever else, but you're using that same process, choosing to go about it in a slightly different way, and as a result create something quite different. And when it was young particularly, this was very floral on the nose. It's a really intriguing one as this sort of slightly dessert-like thing, but very floral. And certain situations it will really sing. So, it put up against certain foods, it, can be challenging, depends what you've had to drink before. In the right situations when it really opens up, it's sort of subtle for an ice cider in that way, but it's got lovely little details in that subtlety.
Go on, pros and cons, Grant. Tell us what's good, what's bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, the color is a lot. It's not as rich and as deep as some ice ciders that you see, which I was surprised about. I don't think I've seen an ice cider that's as light as that. And it doesn't have that same sort of caramel punch, but yeah, it is a nice kind of honey and sort of the sort of meadowy smell, as opposed to just having that kind of burnt sugar hit almost. And the acidity that's on it is really beautiful, and again a sort of higher acidity than I have had before, with an ice cider from Eden, and even the Pilton ice cider. So yes, it is. I think you said it's more of a summer ice cider, which is great, because I do feel like having an ice cider is definitely something you pour by the fire in winter. That's how I would see it, and that's probably how I would drink it. But this is definitely it's super refreshing, and really light, and I actually I really like it. It's
that acidity you mentioned is a really kind of characteristic thing for Brandland,
right?
The nature of the varieties and also the way that they go about, what they're looking for in it. I really like that because it stops it being just the sweetness. There's a kind of real counterpoint of the acidity, which often can actually mean their ice cider can go great with food. And as you go through kind of the range, if this is on the lightest side, as you say, you go darker in tone until you get to like the Belle de Boscop, the single variety they did the other year that was aged in a single oak barrel for 3 years. I was almost delicious. A kind of dark mahogany in colour. Yeah, it was absolutely surreal. The little droplets in your teeth just still there, like bursting out. And I really like that. They are starting to do more and more aging in what they do. They've got a fascinating project coming up with a lot of limited releases, which, Andreas, I'm sure most of you have met him. He's, fascinating guy for these things. And I really, really like that they're doing that. They are sort of doubling down on the elements that are really, really, really fascinating what they do. In relative isolation, in some ways, and it's really fascinating.
So that this one hasn't been aged and hasn't been in any barrel?
No, this is this is the youthful, juicy, super light side. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
beautiful. Love it.
So, Felix, you've very kindly provided us with 3 very different ciders, different styles, different fruit, different processes, different countries. In the case of the Brandland there in Sweden, how do you and how have you gone about choosing brands that or makers, let's say, to have as part of your portfolio? What's the approach? I was going to say, does brand aesthetic have a point to play at the start? And given that Mr. Oliver was at the very top of your list, and knowing Martyn's thoughts on Tom's early branding, you were obviously able to see beyond purely brand alone. But what is it that you look for that has that magic that you want to champion and celebrate?
It's an interesting question, because obviously that's one that you kind of ask yourself a lot, or underlies. It's always there in the background, I suppose. And it's really fascinating, boundaries between, particularly in previous years, a slight sense of responsibility in not limiting to your own sense of taste, but at the same time, to do justice to what cider can be and the really good makers out there, still trying to sort of compete against yourself to strive for what is good. It's quite easy otherwise to settle on what your palate might think, and it's a really hard process to judge how you show the wider spectrum, how you judge something to be good in the wider view. And the aesthetic side was mostly initially just because it wasn't there at all, to shut Martyn up and satiate that anger.
Oh, thanks very much. You've done us all a service there.
Oh, he's louder than ever, isn't he?
Well, they've given me a fucking megaphone. Here we are. You've come in tonight on your boat with the most fucking London accent I've heard you. The whole time you've been like, I'm here with my bill, eat some cider. But the thing that really frustrated me about Oliver's, and I think you've nailed it with the brand now, is the quality of the product. I had to beg people to drink it, because it's one of the best things I've ever drank. And it looked crap. So I like that you went, hang on, no, I can work with this. And you've got it to a point now where all his labels look lovely, and the quality's matched, but without, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know particularly from the outside as well, the appearances and that side of what we do as well might stand out quite prominently, but exactly that. The whole point is that the liquid itself deserves it. It's not that we want to put all that effort and attention into labels, into the appearance, into the way it's talked about, discussed. It's fundamentally all coming back to the idea that the liquid deserves to be understood. So if we put a ton of effort into that and try to do that in a way that we, to the best of our abilities, can think, can represent certain things and help shift and change what is thought to be cider, and what appreciation and awareness exists for these kind of drinks, that's fundamentally it. I know it might be a little bit like wood for the trees in that sense at times, but it's been so many layers of proof of concept of, really, again, Gabe, I know we've talked about this before. It's a little bit like trying to sort of scout ahead, you test things. You also know that at the end of the day, if it comes back around and, really traditional farm gate cider or something that is labeled as Old Oliver's, whatever, actually gets appreciated, then great, But it's trying to say, of the tools at your disposal, and in the environment and the world that we have, given everything that's happened, in taste and in aesthetics, in the likes of craft beer and natural wine, make the most of what we can to help cider as a whole of this caliber be understood and be spread around. Yeah.
Felix, thank you so much for coming in and having a chat with us and talking through your sort of thinking and ideology and all approach to things cider. What, just as a sort of final wrap, what are you looking forward to over the course of the next 12 months? What's going to be exciting?
I'm just looking forward to, I'm really interested to see how this summer shapes up. The I talked at the start a little bit about how stuff's changed actually, and going into the pandemic, we were like 95% wholesale, mostly pubs, restaurants, even places like Tate Modern. And that all shut basically across 2 days, And I had a couple of months without a day of weekend, getting everything flowing with retail, everything. It's just so glorious now to be focusing back on the wholesale side, so fundamentally. And yet we still grew a bit over 50% across last year, And as I say, the awareness, it's just a lovely feeling and sensation. And I just can't wait to see what ciders makers create as a result. The kind of high coming out of all this. Fingers crossed that all runs smoothly. New makers as well. It feels like makers go in waves. There's the old school, the likes of James Marsden at Greg's Pit and Tom Oliver, those sort of 2-decade, ones, a lot of them stemming from the likes of Gene Knoll. Then there's been this last 3, 5, 6 year, wave of kind of people like Finder Foster and Wilding. And you start seeing interesting things and hearing of bits, near you, Grant, or not necessarily, but, in your neck of the woods in Scotland, there's some really fascinating things happening. Back last year, between lockdowns, we went to go to Riga in Latvia for the Baltic Cider Awards. And again, just things occurring in such a short span of time. Really fascinating. Things of uniqueness. The paradise apples they work with, the sort of crabs of our world, but again, unique kind of properties and all sorts going on. So it feels like that wave is pushing along, and that's what I'm excited to see. What other stuff pops up, new things, new people, new articles, new places.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. It's going to be a fab year, and we're going to drink our way through it, I suspect. Felix, where do people need to head to in order to learn more about the Fine Cider Company and the things that you're working on? What's the website? What are the social media handles?
The website is www.thefinecider.company. We're at fine_cider on Instagram. We don't really bother with anything else anymore, to be honest. That Facebook thing.
There really is no point, is there?
It's just too much stuff to do. It's the same, I think I'm not looking forward to be like things like trade shows return. We never really bothered doing them anyway. It's a sort of weird version of social dynamics rather than stuff, spreading into new territory perhaps. But and keep your eyes out, just Instagram is a great source, but otherwise keep an eye on the makers as much as anything, really,
Absolutely.
There's various articles and bits and pieces coming along as well. So as you guys have talked about and championed, there's various sources for that, places like Pellicle and Burham and others who really shaping up wonderfully. I can't wait to see what they do over the coming
And
few
now
years.
the new cider review as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah, Adam has got a wonderfully perceptive palette there. And with James, who was involved in the judging earlier as well. And it's all to the good.
You fucker.
Everyone's involved in the judging.
Oh.
Well, on that bombshell, there we go. Felix, thank you so much for joining us here at the Neutral Cider Hotel. I hope you've had as much fun as we have had. Thanks for the drinks. Cheers to you. Safe sailing on the great ship HMS Cider. Cheers to you. See you again soon.
See you.
And to wrap up things here this week at the Neutral Cider Hotel, we've got some of your listener questions. Martyn, what have we got?
Well, Gabe, when I told you that, I actually lied a bit. I asked our listeners a question again, and I feel like I've done this the last few times. So just save us all the fucking hassle and do a speak pipe. Speakpipe.com/Neutral Cider Hotel. Just say fucking anything. But I posted, where's the best pub/bar/drinking establishment for cider near you? Now, we got a few, so I'm just going to reel through them. But Southsiders said in Chicago, the Northman Riverwalk right on the Chicago River is a great spot. Timothy AJ said Mr. West, Melbourne. Melbourne. Have to fucking fly there, ... So, okay, yeah. And then we had...
From what? You have to fly there wherever you are?
It sounds like he's not near there, so he's like, I have to fucking fly there. Like
I see.
I'm just more confused. The wording of it was really confusing. So Timothy, if you can tell us where you are, that would help out. So Eleanor Taylor, Eleanor in DC said, gotta go with Ancho, but Capital Cider House is top of the list too. And then
Are we just going to accept that? No. I feel like I should stand up for Eleanor on her behalf.
Martyn called himself out for that voice a week or two ago. So,
Eleanor, we at the Neutral Cider Hotel, we wish to distance ourselves from the accent that Martyn had just put on there and just not portray our thoughts or feelings towards the wonderful world of cider and American heritage. Thank you.
Just like the idea of her listening in going, again?
Totally. You like the idea of that. See, Martyn, most people would dislike the idea of that. Like Gabe and I.
Yeah, no, well,
to a regular contributor, who, especially when you've just gone, just do a speak pipe for us, will you, please?
Yeah, but then we can hear her voice. I'll tell you what, Eleanor, send us a speak pipe and prove you don't sound like that. That's the gambit. I know I could be bang on.
Touché.
So, yeah, there you go.
That's quite threatening. But also
yeah, it's a bit
quite
threatening. See if you're going to do it. Do an impression of Martyn.
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
She just goes, and it's correct. Yeah. So, guys, let's throw it to the group here. I'm going to throw this to Scott first. Scott, where you're from, New Orleans, what are the best drinking establishments for cider?
your grasp of America is impressive, Martyn. Honestly, cider. There is a cidery in my neighborhood called Bivouac. So that's the closest one. They make some pretty good ciders. Honestly, though, I don't find cider much in bars. I actually just buy it. I don't find it very often in pubs or bars. I just have to go to bottle shops and buy it.
So what bottle shops would you go to in your area then?
There's a bottle shop near me called North Park Bottle Shop. Sorry, it's North Park Bottle Craft.
Oh, well, that's as many words as you could put in the title.
That is not
brand 101 there. Yeah,
throwing words at the fridge.
Yeah. Bottlecraft in North Park. That's it. Bottlecraft.
So Bottlecraft in North Park. You can get the finest aged Perrys from Oliver's in Herefordshire for only $30. So Grant, in Scotland, where's a good drinking establishment near you? And also, let's say this: where would you go if you could in the UK, kind of thing?
Near me, I'm looking forward to Futtle Brewery reopening. We can walk there from our house. They've got it's a brewery, so they've got their own beers. They've got a great selection of ciders as well, and some nice wines. And since we moved here, I've not really been able to go to a local. So to be honest, here I'm looking forward to anything, but specifically Futtle. And in Scotland in general, where would I go? It just feels like so long since I've been able to do it.
Places.
There's the the Thornwood in Glasgow. Let's go to the Thornwood in Glasgow.
If you're able, yeah.
Yeah, if you're able to.
Did you say able?
If you're able to go.
So,
able.
I mean, we've just rang the bell as many times as we can. In a minute. So, Gabe, where's near you, and where would you go to if you could just like be out in the rest of the UK? And I'll extend this for you as well. One for anywhere in the world, because I know you're a slightly travelled individual man.
Slightly travelled
individual man.
That was like the most backhanded compliment, or I don't know, like
it's just bonkers, aren't I? I'm just on a roll.
Totally bonkers.
Slightly travelled. I just feel like well travelled is something that, like, that's a compliment. It makes you sound like a sort of rounded individual. A person who's educated in the ways of the world, has seen a lot of things. Slightly travelled.
You've just stepped outside your comfort zone, and
you've gone everywhere, and you've ordered from like the restaurant that they've got everything written in English. That's slightly travelled. That like, sweet and sour. We'll have that every time.
I've been to McDonald's in every country. That's what you mean.
You're a slightly travelled individual, man.
That's the name of the episode for sure. By the way.
Gabe, you're a slightly troubled individual, man. Where would you be drinking Perry from a can?
Good question. Well, first of all, I'd like to go down and support the Cider Box in Bristol, which I still haven't actually gone to like drink on a Saturday afternoon. And I look forward to doing that, to supporting Dan and supporting cider in Bristol.
Well, maybe
I'd also like to.
Maybe we can cut you off there. That's the end of your travels. So I was going to say we should actually go down there and have a drink and record it and see what happens, you and I.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? So the Cider Box in Bristol, it would be first sort of port of call. I'd like to try some more of the old school cider pubs as well. There's only like a handful truly left, and I think I mentioned the Ye Olde Cider Bar down in Newton Abbot, and there's another one called the Square and Compass down in Dorset. I think it's near Worthmer Travers, that I've heard about, never been. If I do a bit of a camping trip down to Dorset, I'll give that a try. And from an international perspective, two places. First of all, the Mootery Inn, which was my local pub in New Zealand, where I used to live. New Zealand's oldest pub, actually.
Aww.
Amazing cider from the cider maker that I worked for, the Peckhams, and also great local beer, including some actual like hand pulled, like real ale, which an English guy, Martyn Townsend, he brews down there. Awesome place and experience, and a little closer. Well, in Norway, so it's a little closer than New Zealand, I suppose.
You are slightly travelled.
Yes. The Ciderhuset in Balestrand and Sørgenfjord. Norwegian listeners, you can give me marks out of 10 for my Norwegian accent. Has got possibly the most spectacular view of any cider place in the fjords out west. Pretty lush. So yeah, there's lots of amazing places, and we look forward to getting back to seeing them sometime soon.
Yeah, well, for me, Bristol, it's got to be Cider Box. But yeah, Dan set up like such a lovely little place there that it is fucking. It's just, I went there when it opened, and it was that kind of still anxious, not as anxious as I am now, but that anxious kind of new COVID thing. But he dealt with it really well, and I mean, the range there's a lot of like casual stuff. Nice stuff in bottles, so you could have a pint or a sharer. It's wonderful for that. The Orchard Inn, I've never been to in Bristol, so that is like a must rectify. I'm really sorry, guys. Bristol's kind of one of those for me, it's the exact opposite end of Bristol. So I'd have to either drive there or be on the bus for 7 days. 7 days. First, shit. But
absolutely, you're right. Sam and Steph running the Orchard Inn have. Not only they got like an amazing selection of got mainstream ciders, but also like these bag-in-box ciders, including a healthy range from Hex, Martyn's favorite cider of the moment. But they actually keep it in the cool cellar. They do look after it. It's the right temperature. It's like those ciders in tip-top condition as you want them to be. Yeah.
Well, and then finally, if it's going to be anywhere. I've been there, I've blended, I've hung out, but I'm waiting to see what Little Pomona's tap room is in when it's in full swing, because that for me is one of those where I'm like, you look at it and it's just gorgeous, and it's almost that kind of like cider has this rustic kind of farmyard thing. They've nailed and gone beyond a lot of breweries, in my opinion, of what they've presented there. And I can just imagine, I can't wait till fucking Disco Nouveau and stuff like that are released and it's a party. Like, it just feels like that's the place where I'm going to have the most memorable cider events this year.
Could I also just sort of tag on to there? You've reminded me that something that seems to be happening is that a number of cider makers are opening up tap rooms, and Little Pomona a touch ahead of the game. But we've got Iford just outside of Bath. The Iford cider, they're opening.
Their stuff's lovely as well. Like so
Absolutely.
drinkable. Like
I
easy.
saw Joe the other day, and he said that they've been playing with loads of experimental stuff. There's loads of barrel aged stuff, all sorts of crazy things. That will be another fun trip out. Napton Cider up in Warwickshire, they've just opened up a taproom space as well to get people in there. And also, we shouldn't forget the wonderful Tom Rebel Root. They've got their cider tap in Bolney in West Sussex as well. So there are the number of places to try awesome tasting cider with knowledgeable, fun, and passionate people are just growing and growing and growing. It is lush.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, there we go. That wraps up our listener questions, listener answers. Maybe we should call that a section rather than listener questions. Listener answers here at the Neutral Cider Hotel.
If you enjoy our podcast and want to help, please spread the word about the Neutral Cider Hotel. Tell your friends about it and encourage them to listen. You can also follow, rate, and review us on your favourite podcast app. It really, really does help. Please find and follow us on social media. We are at Neutral Cider Hotel on Instagram and Facebook, and Neutral Cider Pod on Twitter. As always, you can visit us on our website to listen online or share episodes at www.neutralciderhotel.com. Lastly, please reach out and leave us a voicemail with your questions or comments, Eleanor, at speakpipe.com/Neutral Cider Hotel.
So there we go. That wraps up another week here at the Nigel Cider Hotel. Thanks once again to Felix Nash from the Fine Cider Company for joining us and sharing some sensational ciders and his views on the world of cider. We will hear, listen, see, all of the above. What? Next time.
Yes, keep going, baby.
You've been drinking for more than 12 hours now.
It's been a long day.
Oh my God.
Thank you, our dear listeners. We will see you next time. Cheers.